Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at Pitafi World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important developments. Of course, one with reference to the caretaker setup, led of course by the caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Caretaker, and of course the challenges that lie ahead of him. There are many, including of course economic and political challenges, decisions regarding foreign policy, and then of course the law and order situation in the country as well. And there have been of course numerous actions that point towards the kind of urgency that exists in perhaps all of these areas. We know that the interim Prime Minister has also chaired a meeting with regards to the economic situation with all the relevant stakeholders on board as well, and has tasked them with quick reforms and moving towards, of course, better decisions with regards to the standby arrangement of the IMF as well. And while that is something that is extremely important, we of course also know that law and order situation is of utmost importance as well, especially in terms of the kind of attack that has been seen on a military convoy that was taking a Chinese delegation. And this is important also in terms of what has happened today, the focus of which is going to be our next segment. Of course, the kind of incidents that we have seen in Jaranwallah. This is extremely important in terms of the kind of challenges that lie ahead, and we've seen that the Prime Minister has also tweeted about it. But I'll talk more about that later on. There is, of course, the aspect of the caretaker setup also taking a look forward regarding the conduct of the general elections. We also know that the Supreme Court Bar Association has also filed a petition with the Supreme Court also asking the ECP to give a final date of the conduct of these elections and challenges, of course, the suspension with reference to the results of the CCI as well, and something that needs to be done in order to have timely elections in the country. We still haven't had a date yet from the ECP, but it's of course important in terms of whether or not the elections will be held within the 90-day time period, something which was hinted even before the caretaker setup took over by the previous government, that may not be possible, and that the ECP's responsibility is there. But regardless of that, the new census results will also be taken in, and because of that, new delimitations are also in order. And so this means that we're expecting something along the lines of the first quarter of 2024. But this is something that perhaps is not welcome in all corridors, and there have been some aspects in both the political and the judicial arena that have raised objections to this. So we're going to try and explore that further, and how exactly will the caretaker setup deal with that. And now, of course, our second segment, which focuses on the very tragic and unfortunate and of course condemnable incidents that have taken place in Jaranwallah. And this is something that the interim Prime Minister has also tweeted about and has said that he is gutted by these incidents. And it's of course important to understand what exactly happened there and the kind of religious intolerance that unfortunately was seen in the area, with an enraged mob attacking various churches and also looting the houses of the people nearby, and then of course also harassing and torturing people regarding the Christian community on allegations of blasphemy, on allegations that the Holy Quran was desecrated, and unfortunately something which was also spoken through the kind of announcements made by the local mosques as well, which added to the violence and incited the people further. And this is of course indeed unfortunate when we take a look at this in line with how the police has also filed FIRs against at least 2 Christian residents being accused of blasphemy, and of course something that the Prime Minister has also condemned, and of course various other quarters in the country too. But unfortunately this is not the first incidents of accusations of blasphemy resulting in enraged mobs lynching people and killing them as well, and then of course harming buildings and sacred places such as churches as well. So we're going to be trying to explore what really is the basic measure that needs to be taken as we move forward, and the kind of reflection that is required in our laws, and also how we are able to then provide the kind of security that indeed is a responsibility for all the citizens of this state. So we're going to be taking a look at that at the end of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by Senior Analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. We've also been joined online by Political Analyst Dr. Niaz Murtaza and Senior Analyst Brigadier Retired Babar. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion. And let me start with you, Dr. Niaz. We're going to first be talking about the caretaker setup and the challenges that exist. And of course, the economic challenges are huge, and we always, of course, speak about the standby arrangement with regards to the IMF and the kind of measures that need to be taken by the caretaker setup. But I also want to know that while the meeting was taken place, and it's a welcome sign that these priorities are in order, but exactly what sort of expectations are realistic in terms of now this caretaker setup, which seems to be going to be in place much longer than a 90-day time period?
Yeah, well, normally you would say that the only major responsibility of a caretaker government should be to hold elections within the specified time and just keep things moving. But then, unfortunately, this government has come into place at a very critical juncture when Pakistan is facing so many different kind of challenges. There are economic challenges, there are uh, uh, external challenges, and now from what we've seen in the incident today, there are internal challenges that are confronting Pakistan, much more serious than you would want an interim government to handle, which is not supposed to take major policy decisions unless there is an emergency. So I think the first course of action should be to complete the cabinet very quickly, especially the three or four most important positions: interior, finance, and then your foreign minister, because there are major challenges in these three areas. And then the other thing is, of course, it's not so much for the caretaker government to decide, but it's for the ECP to decide about the schedule of the elections, and that's going to be something between the Election Commission of Pakistan and then the Supreme Court of Pakistan, because the matter is already in court in terms of when elections are going to be held. And what you have is this unfortunate situation where two constitutional provisions seem to be in clash with each other. The one about holding elections within 90 days, and then the other one about doing delimitations if census has been organized. So that's something courts will have to take a look into, and then decide which constitutional provision is more important. The courts will have either the option of saying that the current census should not be taken into consideration, and elections should be held on the basis of the old delimitations, or it's going to say that it's okay to delay elections. So all in all, I think it's a plate full for the caretakers. And there is the issue that they should appear completely neutral. And in the last two times that this kind of a setup was used, in 2013 and 2018, it was completely neutral people who were appointed as prime ministers, retired judges in both cases, one from KP and one from Balochistan. But now you have a political figure, so they have to be even more important. So it's good that the prime minister has resigned from his position in the party as well as in the Senate. But still, it would be important to also act completely neutral, so that nobody can raise fingers.
Right, absolutely. And we'll talk further regarding that as well. And let me also bring in the discussion, Brigadier Saab. When we take a look at the situation, of course, the appointment of the interim prime minister was a very important decision. And I would like to, of course, take your perspective also on how well this will then guide the way forward as to who is the caretaker prime minister at the moment, especially given the fact that this setup is no ordinary caretaker setup. It is much more empowered and will be able to make certain decisions that perhaps an ordinary caretaker setup would not have been able to. And so this means that we will have somebody who's taking care of the country for a longer period of time and is also empowered and needs to make, of course, important decisions as we go along. How do you see the appointment of the caretaker PM, and then, of course, the value that the empowerment of the caretaker setup will add to the policies decisions of the country?
Thank you very much for inviting me to just put across my views on this very important aspect. First of all, as far as the appointment of the caretaker prime minister is concerned, the most positive aspect is, I think it's very good to begin with, is that the prime minister was appointed with a consensus between the leader of the House, the prime minister, and the leader of the opposition. Although in the past we've seen that once there was no decision between the two important, I mean to say, the Prime Minister and the Leader of Opposition, it was then referred to the Parliamentary Committee, and in certain cases, even the Election Commission had to appoint the caretaker Prime Minister and the Chief Ministers. So this was a very good sign that the Prime Minister was unanimously, it was agreed between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. His appointment has by and large been welcomed by all political parties and people across all factions of the society. So this is a very good sign as far as the appointment itself is concerned. Then, as regard the Prime Minister himself, is a very energetic man. He has a very, I would say, successful political career also, and people by and large have a lot of faith in him, his abilities, in his dedication, commitment towards the challenges which the country is facing today. And the important, the most important thing is that he is very much alive to the problems the country is facing. He is very much akin to the issues which we're as a country facing today, and most importantly, the economic issues, the security issues, the certain the foreign policy challenges. All said and done, I'm very hopeful that it will be a good caretaker setup, and most probably, and let's hope also that tomorrow, once the caretaker cabinet takes oath, it will also consist of very competent people, dedicated people, apolitical, which will be having a lot of, I would say, commitment to really deliver. As we all know that it is very likely that this caretaker setup is going to last more than 90 days for the obvious reason. Most important is the delimitation of constituencies, as election date and election has to be conducted by the ECP. Uh, Keeping all these things in mind, the outgoing parliament had mandated the caretaker government to take certain important decisions. In the past, we used to see every time the caretaker government will just come in, spend about uh, more or less 80, 85, 90 days, conduct the election, hand over the government to the elected government, and this could then go. But this time, since country is facing a lot of challenges, so the caretaker had to take important decisions. So that is why we all expect the Prime Minister and his team of ministers would be, I think, on their way to take the country as much as possible out of these crisis situation.
Out of these
And
crises.
as we all
Brigadier
have
Baba,
all
you have rightly highlighted, of course, Pakistan is faced with lots of challenges. Of course, economic challenges are the ones you have highlighted, and of course, we are seeing that national security challenges, they do exist as well, especially from the western border of Pakistan. We know that there are troubles still on, originating from within Afghanistan towards Pakistan. Terrorism is being dealt with right now. Can we say that the decisions which are made, especially there is one name which is being echoed for the Interior Minister, that is of Sarfraz Bugti. The Sarfraz Bugti is someone who himself faced multiple attempts when it comes to ambushing him or placing IEDs. He has faced each and everything. So can we say that interim setup is being brought in, a very empowered one, to deal with the national security aspects as well, sir?
100%. I am fully I'm hopeful that this interim setup, as I've said earlier, would be consisting of people from some specialized areas, technocrats, who will be committed to do what they're expected to do. As far as Mr. Sulfar Bhukti is concerned, we all know that he has been the Interior Minister of Balochistan, and he has been dealing with all type of difficult internal security situations, and he belongs to a volatile area himself. He has faced threats in his life, but all these conditions, notwithstanding the difficulties, he has delivered in Balochistan, and he is he's a good mature person. He's experienced one, and most probably once he'll be taking over as Interior Minister, we all hope that this situation would not be new for him, and inshallah, with all the security forces, the law enforcement agencies at his back, and with full authority, he will be able to control the situation, especially the internal security aspects, because as we know, this is not going to be something new for him. So we hope, as it is being speculated, that he'll be the interior minister, so he'll be able to deliver well as expected.
Right. Farrukh, when you take a look at the situation and what Dr. Niaz also earlier was referring to, I want to know that when, of course, we take a look at the kind of reports that were coming in and the emphasis that has been there by the ratification of the CCI of the new census results, it seemed pretty obvious that this is something that is going to go beyond the 90-day period, and that elections will not be held within the stipulated time, and that it will be taken to the first quarter of next year. But now, of course, there are questions being raised by, there is, of course, the Supreme Court Bar Association. There's also the situation when we take a look at different political parties, including the PTI, who've spoken about challenging this in the courts. And then, of course, the fact that we don't have a date yet from the EC. But I understand that is because of the census results. But moving forward, do you think that it's also absolutely clear in the Constitution that this is something that now, after the ratification of the CCI, will be absolutely necessary, and that when we take a look at the way that we can expect the general elections to be conducted, that this is something that will definitely be considered, and we will not be looking at any other situation?
Thank you very much, Sana. Before I actually answer your question, which is very important, let me also condemn the sad incident in Jaranwallah. My heart is broken, and at this moment, I know how much energy it took me to actually muster up these lines and to talk to you right now, right? This is a sad day. But having said that, going back to what you were talking about, one thing is clear. Last time when we were here and we were discussing the census results, remember at that time CCI meeting had not taken place and we hadn't seen any notification. At that time, I read to you Article 51(4) of the Constitution, and I actually pointed out verbatim, I think, at that time, how it becomes mandatory on the government of Pakistan, especially Election Commission, to incorporate the results of census once that is notified by CCI. After that, many things have happened. CCI has notified the new results, and after that, we are moving towards delimitations. So delimitations actually take precedence over other things, because you have to incorporate the new voters that might be actually included in the numbers. But to do that, you don't just need delimitation, you need also new electoral rolls. So naturally, what you're saying actually makes sense, and that's why there is anticipation that the elections might be delayed. But on the other side, we have seen also some strategic kind of moves around Supreme Court of Pakistan. Of course, usually it is thought that institutions should not be political in nature, but we have seen that our Honorable Supreme Court, has been part of politics, especially when you saw something very interesting happening, that they waited for the end of this National Assembly, and after National Assembly had expired, then they handed out the verdict regarding curtailment of their own powers. Similarly, today, one petition was moved in Supreme Court challenging the census results and particularly notification. And the prayer was to actually do away with that notification, that so that you can go ahead and you can conduct polls according to the previous census. So I'm interested because yesterday and day before yesterday, our Supreme Court of Pakistan had made a very encouraging statement that delimitations are, regarding and transparency of delimitations are essentially in the interest of public, in the interest of the people of Pakistan. So there has to be transparency, right? With that kind of a situation now, because my court keeps on reminding me that it is taking special interest in people's rights, when somebody goes to a Supreme Court and says that disregard 30 million new votes or 30 million people that you have counted. I want to understand what national interest or popular interest or people's interest that is going to fulfill. So in coming days, as I predicted yesterday, that 2 quarters are going to give tough time to the government or election commission or other bodies. One, the superior judiciary, and we have seen also in Islamabad High Court as well that an officer was chastised, and after that 2 of the political dissidents, let's call them, they were allowed to go back home. Similarly, at the Supreme Court level also, we have seen similar kind of things that might actually keep on happening until the current or incumbent Chief Justice retires. On the other side, we have also seen that the President of Pakistan also sent back 13 bills that were passed in the past National Assembly after its term had expired, and he has asked the Parliament to reconsider the whole thing. So what exactly is Parliament going to do, because it is now incomplete? We'll have to wait for the next assembly to be actually elected before any of those laws can become part of the constitution or rather law.
Yeah,
right.
As Sana, if
and
you
Faisal, add to whatever you want to say, but also I want you to also comment on the way that different political parties you think are going to react to whether or not they want the new census results to be part of the elections or not, because of course whatever the decision is constitutionally, that of course remains to be seen. But what do political parties expect, or what do they desire?
Sana, it's a very good question, and to me, I think all of the parties, they want the new census to become part of it, because if we just go along with the 2017 census, then of course the youth, the very vibrant youth who want to vote, who want to become part of democratic system of Pakistan, of course it can only be possible through that if they are included in the list, and if they are in the part of the new census, and that is why it is important for all of the political parties, and they do consider it very important for the elections. And along with that, of course, I had a question for Dr. Niaz as well. I was anxiously waiting for my time to ask him a question about it. We know that there are 2 major parties who are going to contest the coming elections. I'm talking about PMLN and People's Party. Both were allies in the previous government, part of the PDM, of course. And if we, talk about whether the elections should be prolonged and how prolonged they should be, Dr. Niaz, do you think that both of them, let's say if it is, now it looks like it would be more than 90 days, but can we say that as soon as the 90 days barrier crosses, we might see both of the parties, of course, trying through the political ways to obviously force the government, the interim setup, to hold election? And can we see that they might come to the roads to protest against it, that the elections should take in time?
Well, I think different parties have different calculations. I think PMLN is the one that's more concerned about having more time to recover from the bad press that it caught because of the huge economic crisis that it was dealing with, the high inflation. And the more distance it can put between that performance and the date of the elections, it will be better. Punjab is very, very competitive with PTI and PMLN being arch rivals there. With the PPP, it's different because they don't have that kind of a competition in Sindh. I think they will still be able to carry Sindh. They were not holding the portfolio economics. So I don't think they will get blamed so much about the high inflation and so on. So I think PPP would be more interested, PTI would be very interested in having elections on time, whereas PMLN might be more interested. And you can always question why PMLN waited so long to notify the results of the census. All of this should have been planned so that the results of the census had been announced several months ago, so that delimitation could have been done, and this clash in the two constitutional provisions would not have happened. It's true that you can blame the president for sitting on laws, and the Supreme Court for waiting for the parliament to get dissolved, but then you can also blame similarly the government for delaying the census so much. So there's a lot of blame going around, and ultimately I don't think we can automatically assume that the elections are going to be postponed now. It's going to be decided by the Supreme Court. If it rules that no, hold the elections on the basis of the old delimitation, then the ECP will have to do that. Or we could have the same spectacle where the orders of the Supreme Court get ignored, as has happened in the case of unfortunately the KP Assembly and the Punjab Assembly.
Punjab
so it's all
Assembly,
going to be
KP.
very contested.
Punjab Assembly, sir, not KP. Supreme Court never ordered anything regarding KP Assembly.
Yeah, Punjab Assembly, no.
Yeah,
that's
so we
true.
have
But the
to
situation
Pakistan.
is the same in KP as well. That elections have been postponed unnecessarily.
Right. Dr. Niaz, also add to that of course it remains to be seen what is going to happen, but I want to know your opinion on, given the current scenario and the current situation, do you think that it is more important to hold elections on the basis of the new census results than it is to hold timely elections?
Well, you see, there are two things that could have happened from delimitations. First of all, changes in the total number of seats, then changes in provincial seat proportions. All of that cannot happen because it requires a constitutional amendment, and there is no assembly to do that. Now the only benefit will be that a delimitation may result in some changes within the provinces without increasing their number of seats, but some districts getting more, some districts getting less, and in provinces where there are ethnic divisions, that could make a difference. For example, in Sindh, it remains to be seen whether the rural areas will gain seat at the expense of the urban areas or vice versa. So, but the third point that Mr. Faisal made, that people will get the chance to vote, that really doesn't depend on the census, because those people who are already 18 now were counted in the last census, and it's not whether they get counted in the census. It depends on whether they take the trouble to go and get themselves enrolled with the Election Commission of Pakistan as voters, and that can happen anytime. You don't have to wait for a census for those people to enroll themselves. So out of the three things that you're mentioning, only the second thing, some changes at the district level would be possible. So much of the benefits from a new census, especially at the provincial level, would be lost. So let's see what the Supreme Court decides. It's ultimately going to be decided, and then it will be up to
cut you. Dr. Saab, sorry to cut you, but let me remind you your own remarks last time you were in this program. When we were talking about census and how the number kept on increasing, you said that right now you're saying that most of the people who are now 18 have been counted in the past census. But last time you said that there might be reasons why there were people who might be of age but were not counted. So which one should I go with?
If they haven't registered themselves, but people don't have to wait for a census to register themselves. They have the option of going anytime and getting themselves registered at Election Commission of Pakistan. Getting people who are turning 18 into the rolls has nothing to do with the census.
Right, absolutely, and thank you for raising that point. Brigadier Saab, the situation when we take a look at the delay in elections, of course, is something that is still a question mark, but I want to know whether or not you think that possibly the kind of timelines that we have earlier heard about, given the first quarter or March 2024, do you think possibly that they can be delayed any further, and whether or not that's going to in any way impact the current political dynamics of the country? And also add to that whether you think that when we take a look at how things have been reported and how different perspectives exist, there's also the connections that have been drawn with reference to, say, perhaps the return of Mr. Nawaz Sharif to Pakistan, or perhaps the arrest of the former PTI chairman that has been linked with these timelines. Do you think that any of that has any credibility?
I personally feel that naturally the time frame by which the elections are going to be held is going to have implications, political implications for different political parties. For example, PMLN naturally has its power base, its stronghold in Punjab. So Punjab is much more different from rest of the provinces. Every province has its own dynamics as far as the politics and the various political aspects is concerned. So naturally, if they get more time, as Mr. Niaz has said recently in his comments that PMLN would for various reasons may be interested that elections may be delayed by a month or two. Um, as far as People's Party is concerned, they have stakes in Sindh, so it's not going to be much of a challenge for them in Sindh. But as far as the cases against PTA chairman is concerned and the return of PML Supreme Leader Mr. Nawaz Sharif is concerned, it is going to really have some effects on the political arena, political scene, especially in Punjab and KP naturally for the obvious reasons. PML naturally would want Mr. Nawaz Sharif to be back as they have announced also that he'll be most probably back in third week of September or mid of September for reasons we know all very well. So once he'll be back, naturally their morale is going to be much more higher what it is today, and he'll naturally lead their political campaign, the election campaign. As far as PTA is concerned, with PTA chairman naturally convicted already, there are so many cases against him. In coming days, we might see cases going to the courts, even in different areas. So they have concerns. So they have problems also. All said and done, overall, as far as the country is concerned, I think if for the reason of delimitation, which is a constitutional provision, if the ECP decides that election may be going to be held, but not within 90 days, within maybe 5 months or even lesser more than that, there's not going to be any major political upheaval in the country, because major political parties, other than Pakistani Tehreek Insaf, somewhat, I think they are on board. And if you see the political statements coming from various political leaders, there's any problem in that. PTA, for obvious reasons, they are concerned. And today I've seen a letter from the acting chairman written to the Prime Minister also, where he has also stressed that election should be held within 90 days. I personally feel that whenever the elections are held, they should be held in peaceful environment, and important issues which the country is facing today have to be resolved. If not resolved fully, at least they should be on track, right on path
Right,
for the
absolutely.
resolution,
And Brigadier
especially
Sahab, I'm glad
the
you raised that
economic
point
issues
of the letter as well, because I want to explore that further, and I want you to also comment on with regards to what was being said. And unfortunately, we hear that a lot when we talk about elections or politics, that there needs to be a level playing field. And I want you to explain and elaborate on what exactly does that mean, and isn't that sort of a given when we talk about the situation, and that and in whatever aspect we talk about free and fair elections? Isn't that always the case, and why is it something that is being emphasized? And whether or not you think that claims of limiting or lowering the kind of polarization that exists in the society is also one aim that is being fulfilled with the delay in elections.
And Brigadier Babar, if you can shed some light on this as well, that few of the PTI leaders, they believe that all of the cases which they are facing, they were politically motivated cases by the previous government. Of course, they are highlighting about the PDM, and now when PDM is off the screen, they are expecting that the political victimization would reduce.
I would just try to answer your question first. As far as political victimization is concerned, this is a normal allegation which keep hearing for various political parties. In the history also, one political party blaming other, like in last 5 years, PMLN used to say. So there was some reality also. As far as PTI is concerned, once you talk about the cases pertaining to the Tosha Khana, and now as far as Cypher is concerned, these are much different cases. These cases, and especially cases pertaining to 9th May attacks. So these cases are different from the cases which we've been seeing, we've been hearing in the past. National security is a very, very different area. It's of supreme importance. The cipher is an issue of national security. 9th May is issue of again a national security where the people have been accused of attacking the armed forces of Pakistan. So this is not political victimization, which I personally feel. Yeah, as far as the corruption cases are concerned, there might be some, you can say, a truth in it, but again, the courts are going to decide about it. You see, in last about 1 year or so, the courts, by and large, we have seen everybody's of the opinion that they've been, as far as PTA is concerned, they've been giving them extra mileage. So they should not blame the court. They should expect the court are going to decide the cases on merit. And once the court is going to decide the cases on merit, they should be having any, I think, apprehensions about that. So as far as these cases are concerned, let's see what is going to happen in coming days. And this is for sure that it's all politics. If the cases are going to be decided in their favor, they are going to appreciate. If the cases are going to be decided against them, again, they'll be blaming the court, they'll be blaming the PDM government, they'll be blaming the political opponents and even the caretaker government.
Right, absolutely. And Farrukh, I'd like you to add something to that and also comment on the possibility whether or not you think something exists in the future of the PTI chairman also being involved in any sort of political dialogue with the caretaker setup, or of course as part of the next elections.
Right. Usually when you talk about the possibility of a car actually backing up, you have to first look at it, whether it has any reverse gear or not.
Yeah.
The chairman PTI keeps on talking about U-turns, but I haven't seen him showing any flexibility regarding the other political parties of the country. This usually happens with any political populism, any brand of political populism, where all politicians say, I am the sole representative of the people and others are just thugs. And that continues to happen, right? But I wanted to actually comment on what was said earlier as well regarding PMLN wanting to delay the elections. Other parties might not be actually desiring that at all. My concern is that a lot of this, and I want to see some hard data on that, right? That all these assumptions on one side, which party is popular, which party is not, usually in other countries, what you would have seen by this time is torrent of opinion polls being conducted, and then you would know which party stands where, whether you trust those polls or not, but they would have been there. Similarly, you would have seen media focusing on the matters that matter to the common people, but what have we seen in the past 2-3 months? The entire Pakistani media kept on speculating, and punditry particularly, on who is going to be the caretaker prime minister. And finally, it proved that all of them were wrong, right? Similarly, now everybody is speculating about the cabinet, and we don't know what exactly is going to happen because we have seen the shock and all already. But regarding all these assumptions, my concern is, look, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I pull up whenever there's a red light. So my concern is that I would like to adhere to the Constitution as much as possible. The only problem is when the Constitution starts contradicting itself, like delimitation first or 90 days first, which one should I adhere to? And then when we see this incredible shrinking of the Supreme Court's own benches, where it always invariably ends up being 3 judges of the same bent, and they keep on doing this exactly same thing, predictable things, then what am I to do? So I can do one thing, and I think it is going to become my flex. I keep on surrendering as much as possible. Whatever you want to do, just tell us and we'll say it is right.
All right. We're going to be quickly also taking a look, of course, at the unfortunate incidents of Jaranwallah. And Dr. Niaz, I'll take your opinion first, of course, with reference to what has happened. Of course, it's tragic and condemnable, but where do we move forward from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that these kind of incidents are happening so frequently. There have been repeated attacks on, different churches, whether they belong to, Hindus, Christians, Ahmadis, even some attacks on, Shia mosques. So, what I think is lacking is, the political will. I mean, you see the difference between the kind of action that occurred after the May 9 attack and, the kind of actions that has happened after, such attacks, which in my opinion are more reprehensible than, say, the attack on well-guarded places like, the army commander's house. The church of a marginalized community is much more, sacrosanct for me. But you won't see, the same kind of, action against the groups that are responsible. Some, low-level people will be arrested, and then, even then they might be released. What you need is, you have to figure out, who are the brains behind these kind of acts, and then, act against them so that, the leadership gets liquidated, and then, the ideology that is giving rise to these kind of incident, that has to be tackled. And, there's so much, extremism being spread by different kind of groups. So those are the kind of actions that we need to take.
Absolutely. And Brigadier Sahab, these are important and they call for a lot of self-reflection as well, not just in terms of our response after such incident takes place, but also in order to prevent them. We've seen many cases in the past as well. How do we reflect particularly on our laws in ways to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, it's very, very unfortunate. These type of incidents naturally bring very bad name to the country. And Islam is a religion of peace, which teaches us to live in harmony with all the minorities. And actually, being a Muslim, nobody can even think of even listening anything against our Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or our Holy Book. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But these type of incidents, at times they happen, and later on we come to know that it was all more of a speculation-based incidents or some rumors going around in the area. I think most importantly, the religious leaders, they have to be active. They have to play a very, very important role. Naturally, the government of the day has to enforce the law and take everybody into confidence. And today, after the incident, the Prime Minister has very categorically stated in his tweet that all those people responsible would be taken to the task, and they'll be held accountable. But in the past also we've been hearing these type of statements.
Right.
Let's hope that this time it actually happens also, and these type of incidents
You're so right.
when no media can
We welcome such statements and we need them to be backed by action. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab and Dr. Niaz, for joining us and being part of the discussion. Faisal, very quickly, when we take a look at this situation, as Brigadier Saab was saying, many of these are just accusations and they're not true, and even then we cannot control the mob that then enrages.
Yes, Sana, this is highly unfortunate, and I think there are certain things which we need to have in default settings. Number one, mosques should not be used, especially the speakers should not be used for inciting violence, which has taken place here. And if we talk about rule of law, and law takes its action or not, and how long it takes to take action. Especially we know that Punjab police has anti-riot forces as well. Why they were not used there? And we could see police standing there, but why they were unable to stop it, number one. And number two, if they required more force, why didn't they ask them to come there? And very quickly, someone who's right on the top, as Dr. Niaz earlier said, they should be taken in the account, and they should be obviously arrested. And there is lots of, we always talk about, on social media, on YouTube, on everywhere, there is lots of content which actually ignites these sort of things.
Right.
We always see that PEMRA and other organizations banning that. Why can't they go head towards this as well?
Absolutely.
On social media, this kind of content should be banned as well.
Right.
Because this is a situation we must take care of our
Right,
country,
understood. And Farrukh, when we take a look at the situation, this is of course all the kind of actions that is needed to be done in the aftermath of such incidents, and unfortunately we only talk about it then even. What is the real problem here though? What do we need to really address for this to not happen?
Let me guess, 30 seconds,
Yes.
right? Okay, number one, earlier brigadiers, this is clearly a governance issue. It is not a religious issue, right? Absence of governance machinery or their lack of doing what they have to do is actually the problem that we have to address, right? Earlier, Brigadier Sahab was saying that it brings bad name to the country. I couldn't care less about the image. Image is secondary to reality. It is the beating hearts of children whose house might have been demolished or whose church might have been set on fire. That is something that concerns me a lot. But that actually leads me to another thing regarding image. Somehow it seems that at times it feels that our only function has become to lessen the bad image of India. Every time something sad happens in India, the next day or a couple of days later something happens in Pakistan as well. When Pehlu Khan was lynched, a couple of days later we saw Mishal Khan being killed. And a woman is raped in India, then we see motorway episode happening. And now recently we saw a new episode and then this one as well. So what does it tell you? That your right wing is somehow compromised. And if it is compromised, why is it that we keep on shouting at the left or liberals for not being that close to the state when it is the right-wing punditry that has to be held at account?
Exactly.
Absolutely, and these are of course important points, and we hope that this action is taken and immediately taken so that this situation is addressed, and our heart of course goes out to the people and to the Christian community within Pakistan, and they are like to us as any other brother or sister in the country. And so we've just celebrated Independence Day, and our minorities are extremely important to us, and we hope that they understand and value that and we lessen the pain that they are currently going through. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.